Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you've just heard Professor Vira asking you to switch on your videos, if you don't mind. We are recording this session. If you prefer not to, of course, there's no requirement to do that for this session, but it would be nice to see a few faces. Welcome to the ECR event, our first proper ECR event for this programme for 2020-21, and thank you for signing up. If you haven't met Professor Vira before, I will pass over to him in a second, but it's nice to see so many new faces as well as faces that we know very well. So at this point, Bhaskar, I will pass over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hawa, and it's nice to see so many of you. We're a small enough number for me to try and get you to sort of maybe very quickly self-identify, even if you don't put your video on, to tell me what your current position within the kind of university is. I know that from the names, there are some of you who are postdocs, some of you who are PhD students, some of you who are doing master's programs. It would be really helpful. I mean, what I'm structuring our thoughts around is a sort of more generic approach to grant writing. I've often done this, obviously, in a slightly different format, focused around particular funders. And but when I was looking at the list of those who participate, who are taking part in this, it looks like we've got quite a mix, and not all of you will be in the same stage of application. So I've actually instead created a slightly more generic approach rather than targeting it to particular funders, because we're not assuming everyone's looking for a postdoc, for example. Some of you might already be in a position, some of you might be looking for additional funding, some of you might be thinking about a PhD and looking for that kind of funding. So there's a bunch of possibilities that you might be engaged in. So I've made it a bit more generic. What we're going to do, we've got about an hour together. I've got a few basic slides about the process of grant writing and the things that you should think about. But obviously, we're going to try and make it as conversational and interactive as possible. So I don't want it to be you staring at a screen looking at PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to then offer 5 specific live funding opportunities that I'll share my screen so that you see the basic outline of what those funding opportunities are. We'll then put you into a breakout group. You have to tell us which of those 5 funding opportunities you'd like to discuss. And I'd like then, for the breakout groups, I guess you'll end up being in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I don't know, there are 20 of you on the call. And then, assuming your internet allows you to go to the calls, go to the call document, have a look, read about it in the context of what I've been talking about, have a bit of a conversation around that, and then we'll end with the final 10 minutes of just kind of your reflections when you look through the call document. So it gives you a little bit of a real world feel. None of those 5 might be directly relevant to what you particularly want to do, but it'll give you an opportunity to get stuck into the kind of thinking through a grant application. So that's the plan. I hope that makes sense for everyone. Maybe just use the chat while I'm talking, rather than spending 15 minutes going around introducing yourselves, to introduce yourselves. So a very simple way is just to say, the first person on my screen is Yuan. So I'll say, I'm Yuan Pan. I'm a postdoc. I work in the Department of Geography, etc. Right? So just put that in the chat, and I think then it'll be an ideal way for us to get to know each other while I'm speaking. So I'm going to start sharing my screen in a minute, if that's all right. Just for a few basic introductory ideas, and then we'll move on to the kind of exercise. Okay, so that should work now. And let me just put this into... Okay, is that a full screen now? Good, thanks. I will just take my way through this. So I guess, one of the main things that I want to emphasize is before you kind of embark upon the actual process of writing a grant application, it's really worth asking yourself fundamentally what the basic outline of your grant is. Why are you doing this? What is the overall purpose? Are you doing this alone? Are you doing this in collaboration with people? Who is your audience? And I'll elaborate a bit on the audience later, but both the audience for the ultimate work that you want to do, for which you're applying for funding, but also secondly, who is the audience for the proposal? Who's going to read the proposal and judge it? So there's sort of two audiences. One is the ultimate audience that the funding will enable you to reach. But prior to that, there's usually a very big hurdle, which is, who's the audience for whom you're writing the proposal? Because they're going to be the people who are ultimately making a judgment on whether to fund it. What are the expectations? And again, there is a sort of multiple dimensions to this. Expectations of the funder. Clearly, again, you're writing a proposal in response to a particular funding opportunity. So it's worth being somewhat focused on the expectations that the funder might have. But then, of course, the expectations of you, any collaborators or team, in terms of what you expect to get out of the proposal. And then, of course, if there are ultimate audiences or beneficiaries with whom you intend to work, what are the expectations that they may have about the work that you're proposing to do? And then a really important one, and maybe some of the examples will help with this, which is about timing. Sometimes funding calls come around with really short turnaround time. So you suddenly get alerted to a funding call that has a deadline next week. Thinking about whether that fits with your own commitments, thinking about whether that fits with the grant management and support structures within the university if you're going through the university. At the moment, because of COVID, the research office has a pretty long lead time for large and complex grant applications. And when you look through all the kind of expectations of these grants, it does take them time to run through all the checks that they need to do, all the financial details that they need to put in. So timing for yourself, does it work for you in terms of your own commitments? Timing for those who need to support the application. You really need to think that through really carefully before investing a huge amount of time and then suddenly finding that actually you're not able to make the application on time. So that's just a few kind of preliminaries which are worth going through in order to even decide whether or not it's worth embarking upon this process of writing a grant application. And I think the kind of sequential reasoning that I would go through is sort of outlined on this slide, which is, do you have a plan for what you want to do and why you want to do it? Can you see how your plan will result in the outcomes that you want, the results that you want? In my sequential reasoning, I didn't find funding first. So it's not like you find a funding call and then start working out a plan to do something. Funding should never drive your objectives. You should already want to do something, and funding should be an enabler. I think it's really problematic if the motivation is purely to get a grant. The motivation should be a piece of work or the next step career-wise that you intend to do in any case. And then funding is an enabler for that objective. I think it's sequentially absolutely the wrong way to start, which is to say there's funding or I'm going to look for funding without actually knowing what you want to do. But once you have identified what you want to do, then obviously it's appropriate to look for funding that will enable that to happen. Once you've done that, then check that, then start reading the details. Does the funder's mission align with what you want to do? Look at the detailed guidelines for every call, and the exercise that we're going to engage in is partly about exactly that, looking at those detailed guidelines, and then do as much planning, discussion, get advice from all those who might be involved, from particularly grant administrators, because often people need to sign off on a formal grant application. So you need to be sure about what the process is. Talk to your mentors, talk to your peers, get as much input as you can, because the quality of a grant proposal will only benefit from as much input. So um, hiding yourself away and trying to kind of write it on your own is probably not a good idea. It's probably better to be as collaborative as you can in order to develop that proposal. So just a few high-level considerations, and I've talked a little bit about the audience, and in this case, I'm talking specifically now about the grant that you're writing. Who is the audience for your proposal? Who's going to read it? Who's going to make the decisions? Try and look, if you can. Some funding bodies tell you who is going to sit on the panel, so you know who the panel is. Try and research the panel themselves. Try and obviously think about the funding body and its mission, its goals, its values. Think about whether your work fits in. Does it align with those goals and values? And then when you're thinking about them as an audience, are they experts? Are the people who are going to review your grant application experts in the field? Because that's going to shape the way in which you pitch it. Or often, and you can have, when you have very general calls, you can have a panel that isn't made up of subject specific experts, but you have a general panel, people who have a general understanding, but are not necessarily specialists. That starts to become really important in terms of thinking about the language in which your proposal is written. If you're writing it for an expert panel who really knows everything about your subject, you would use a very specialist language. If you're writing it for a more general panel, then you would be using still technically correct, but not too much jargon heavy language. You don't want to alienate the non-specialist from your proposal. And then think about how you could persuade that audience once you've kind of thought about putting yourself in the shoes of the reviewer. How could you persuade them that your proposal is fundable? I think I've already emphasized, I can't emphasize often enough, the importance of looking at the detail in the call document. What are they asking for? What are their specific expectations of the call? And then if you have any uncertainties about that, try and get clarification. I mean, often they have a contact point in the call, and then there's somebody you can follow up with. But one of the first things I do is to look at a call document and highlight all the key points that are visible to make sure that in your thinking about the proposal, you're able to respond to what the call is asking for. The next is about your own fit, either personally or as part of a team, with the expectations of the call. So how can you establish that? How can you demonstrate in the writing of your proposal that you and your team, or you yourself, are the right person, the right fit? So what kinds of things could you use? You could use testimonials, people who either write references or write testimonials which say this is a group or an individual who is absolutely ideally suited for this call. Some calls will actually have a requirement for those testimonials. Others will may not specify. You can establish your credibility by showing that you have a very clear plan and structure. You may have the opportunity to put your CV in, so you can put demonstrate your track record. You can demonstrate through the way you write your knowledge of the field within which your proposal is located. You can demonstrate that you have the right links to enable a successful completion of this project because of partnerships, because of collaborations. So there's a set of things that you're really thinking about. How am I establishing that I and my team are the right people to do this work? And then, of course, what is really important is to be able to communicate your plan clearly to the reader. So this is all about readability, about the structure of the proposal, about the clarity, micro details about the proposal. The size of font, making sure you don't have typos. Nothing kind of puts off a reader more than finding small errors which still remain in the final draft of your proposal. So take the time that you need to actually make it clear and readable. Do things like, bold section headings, etc. Just try and step the reader as clearly through what you want to do, rather than making a dense, tight text, which is very difficult for people to follow. Follow the guidance that's been provided, because again, the call for proposals is likely to have some guidance. Make sure if they say that our proposal requires you to have the following subsections, make sure that you have all the subsections very clearly visible. Um, Obviously, try and use language that's as clear as possible. Don't slip into jargon, but obviously you want your proposal to be technically competent. So use the concepts that are understandable to your audience, and that takes it back to checking who that audience is. Are they specialists in the field, or is this a general panel? That's just a very long list of the kinds of things that typical grant proposals require. They don't all need the same thing, but it's worth having this as a checklist. You should be able to summarize your proposal in a short, paragraph, 100 words, 200 words. And if you're not able to, I suspect that's an indication that you don't yet have a clear proposal. If you're not able to produce a summary, that suggests that you've got a sort of broad idea, but you're not yet at the point at which you can produce a crisp, sharp summary. You should be able to, I guess, in a sort of more management context, people talk about the elevator pitch. Can you actually summarize? You've got a funder, you're stuck in an elevator with them, you're stuck in a lift. You've got 30 seconds because that's how long it takes to get from the ground floor to the third floor. And they say, okay, tell me what your big idea is. Now, it's often not easy to communicate complex ideas in 30 seconds, but the short abstract or summary is the equivalent of the elevator pitch for a proposal. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of detail which follows, but the first thing they may read is this short, brief summary. And it's good to be able to express your ideas in a clear, concise way. Then, of course, the detail will follow, and the detail is often a proposal will demonstrate that there's a existing problem or a need which it's responding to. Most proposals will need a body of text, which is just the narrative about what the project is, but specifics about what your goals are, what your methods might be, what are the indicators that you would use to demonstrate that your project is achieving the outcomes, what kind of monitoring might you have in place to demonstrate that those outcomes are being delivered on a particular timeline, and what is that timeline? How do you, if you're applying for 18 months of funding, how will you use that 18 months? A second set of ideas that are required for you to think through. Increasingly, funders want to know what is the ultimate outcome of the work that you're doing. What impact will it have? That could be an academic impact. You could be writing a book that adds to scholarship. You could be publishing papers, but you may also have other audiences. And in a conservation context, many people are trying to work on real world problems that have impacts on society in various ways. So what is your strategy to convert this idea into something impactful? Are you going to engage in what people call knowledge exchange activities, partnerships with people? Do you have a clear communication plan? Do you have innovative ideas around communication? Are you going to produce some videos? Are you going to produce accessible documents? Do you have a policy audience for whom you're going to produce a policy brief? How will you disseminate that? And increasingly, funders want knowledge to be available in the public domain in open access formats. So can you demonstrate that you'll meet those expectations around open access, both sometimes for the outputs of your research, but also for some of the data sets? Increasingly, funders are saying if this is publicly funded research, the data sets should be made available in a format that others can access. So you need to think about open access needs. a really important consideration, whether it's explicit in the funder's requirements or not, is to just think through the ethical considerations of your research. And I will say that every piece of research has ethical considerations. So if I'm reviewing a grant and the research team says this research has no ethical issues, that suggests that they haven't thought through the ethical issues. In the world we inhabit, all research is taking place in particular settings, and there are ethical considerations which are about the impact of the work that you do. You have to think those through. They don't necessarily have to be hurdles. So not every piece of research necessarily has to have sort of detailed strategy to deal with ethical issues, but all research does have ethical issues which you need to think about. And parallel with that are any risks that might be associated with the work, partly health and safety. So in this current climate, if you're proposing to undertake field research, can you travel safely to your destination? What are the health and safety considerations there, etc. But also project level risks, which are financial, which are regulatory, compliance related. Are you working in a country where there are challenges in terms of governance or corruption or bureaucracy? I mean, those are all risks that you need to consider, that the university, as your kind of host employer, whatever you might want to call it, has to consider. So, when the University of Cambridge, which is where we are, signs off on a grant, they are accepting a liability to the funder that the work that you're undertaking will be undertaken safely. So they're effectively signing off on that liability on your behalf. So you need to think about whether you've thought any risk issues through. A very small word, budget, but that probably takes a long time to figure out. Have you thought about everything that you need money for? What are the funds that you already have? Is there any co-funding that's available that you can demonstrate? Some funders like you to be able to show that there's co-funding. In other cases, they are willing to fund the whole project. So there's a very detailed process of budget building with yourselves and your partners in mind. CVs, obviously, you will probably need an up-to-date CV. So if you're applying for a grant, one of the first things you should do is update your CV as quickly as you can. And also alert your partners that this is required, because I've been part of many proposals where we're scrambling around for the last CV because it's just in time to meet the deadline. So try and anticipate that. You often need to have a statement of your own track record, or the track record of your organization, or that of any collaborators. If it's possible to upload evidence about the need for this work, testimonials from stakeholders, testimonials from others, including explicitly in some cases, recommendation letters. So those sorts of, it's a long list. I've kind of read out a long list, but I hope, for those who, I'll obviously pass the slides on to Hawa, and, those can be uploaded. It's a good thing to refer back to for anybody who's kind of thinking through a grant writing process. Okay, and now my next slides are actually just screenshots from Cambridge's own research office, which has a really good page, and I'll show you the page later, and I'll give you the reference as well in the chat, about various steps in the research process. So I think I've talked about most of these already. First is about planning, writing the proposal, making sure you're doing research with integrity and ethics, managing risk. At the point that your research is being planned, sometimes some of these things may not be as important, but you might need to think through things like intellectual property and copyright upfront, and see whether you need contractual agreements in place for that. A number of organizations that fund research want a data management plan, so you might need some thought about how you'll manage your data, where you'll store it, whether it'll be open access, etc. And you can see that each of those has links. So when I show you the research office website, there's further advice available on all of this. And I talked about collaboration, building a team, etc. as well. They've also got links about where to find funding, and I'll show you some of these funding tools, but there are large external funders, especially in the UK context, UKRI, which is a collection of all the UK research funding councils. There is funding available internally within the universities, small grants typically, and there's quite a lot of really useful small grants for example, for a piece of fieldwork or to get a summer intern or something. So there are options there. There's a number of databases. The one that we subscribe to is Research Professional, and I'll show you a link to that as well. And with your Cambridge CRS ID, with your Cambridge ID, you should be able to access that. And then there are a couple of Cambridge-specific processes. There are some calls where the funders impose a restriction that's called a restricted call. They will say something like the University of Cambridge is only allowed to have one bid. And what the university then does is to try and construct a consortium, which is led by a single PI, but it is trying to be inclusive of as many of the stakeholders within the university who want to take part in that. So that's a restricted call. And there is some support if you're preparing a very large bid to apply to the university for some additional funding for large bids. I think this is my final one. If you're working for the university, the funding tool that the university's research office uses is called X5. Get familiar with the X5. It's not the bus that takes you to Oxford. It's also a research funding tool internally within the university. Your departmental grant administrators will know exactly how to set up a costing in X5. It's quite easy for you to give, in most cases, Excel spreadsheet, which is the list of things that you want funded, and your grant administrator in your department should be able to convert that into an X5 format. But you need to talk to your grant administrator early, alert them that you're planning to make a grant application, tell them that you want to have a conversation about the budget, and they will tell you about what the deadlines are, because if it has to be signed off by our central research services in the university, there's a long lead time that you need to be aware of. Okay, that's all my slides. I think I'll stop. No, I do want to share a few more things. So I said I'll show you. Is my screen still shared?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So that's the research office website. It's just researchoperations.admin.cam.ac.uk. So I'm going to start putting these in the chat if I can do all of this at the same time. Let me find it. There's the chat. Okay, now hopefully these links are coming through. Yeah, so that's the link to the research office site. That has those screenshots that I was showing you, so you can click through and get to all these links from that site. And there's information and advice on all these areas. There's some more stuff about submissions and so on. I didn't necessarily pull that out, but get used to this site because it's got a lot of really useful information. It's a really valuable site. It's basically our sort of key window into what's available out there. My next tab is Research Professional itself, and I'll just do an illustrative search. I'll just kind of type in I don't know why this is. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my. It's really slow. Sorry. I think it's because I'm on Zoom at the same time. Wow. I did not want to do that, but you can basically type in any keyword in there, and you should. Okay, that's better. Yeah, there you go. I've typed in biodiversity and I've got 140 items of, funding that's available in the coming months with deadlines, right? So get familiar with Research Professional. It's a really good resource, and I think you can sign up for email alerts and various such things. I've mentioned UKRI, that's UK Research and Innovation. That's the umbrella which covers all of the research funding councils in the UK, which are here on this little window. So these used to be separate individual research councils, and they've now all come under the umbrella of UKRI. So you've got specialist councils for different subfields. The ones that people in conservation most apply to are probably BBSRC, the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, NERC, the Natural Environment Research Council, ESRC, the Economic and Social Research Council, and AHRC, the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So those are, if you click through, then you can go through to the individual subsites. I mentioned internal funding opportunities. There's a site on the research office which has all those internal funding opportunities as well. Sorry, I was meant to give you these links as I went along. So let me just do that as well. That's Research Professional. I'll just put that in the chat. UKRI, put that in the chat. And internal funding. Some of the Cambridge ones might need you to log in with your CRS ID. Okay, that's that bit done. We're at 11:40. I want you to have a bit of a chance to play around with a few grant applications. So I'll quickly show these to you. I've just picked out 5 which might be relevant. So one is from the UK's Darwin Initiative, which is a live application at the moment, looking at the illegal wildlife trade. It's called the Illegal Wildlife Trade Challenge Fund, and there are various details here. So what I'm now going to do is put these 5 links, and people need to start to identify which of these funding calls they'd like to spend 10 or 15 minutes brainstorming. The second is a German exchange program with Cambridge, and it's called DAAD. It provides specific support for Cambridge-based academics to develop collaborations with people in Germany. So that's our second one. And I put that link. The third one is an internal funding scheme within Cambridge, which is called the Cambridge Humanities Research Grant Scheme. It's a small grant scheme of up to £20,000, mainly for people in the social sciences, arts and humanities. And I've just put that link as well. The fourth one is something called SNAP, Science for Nature and People Partnership, set up by a number of US-based conservation organizations, but it does have open calls for proposals. The current one is closed, but if you look at the 2020 RFP announcement, it's visible through that link, so you can get all the details if you go into the 2020 call, and they pretty much follow the same format. And the final one is a WWF one, which is called the Russell Train Fellowship. It supports people who want to do a master's or a PhD. And it's one example of where you can get graduate funding. So, that's a range of possibilities that people might be interested in. I will now stop sharing. So you need to now choose, and I think, I'm not too sure how we're going to manage this. How I set up five breakout rooms, and the idea is that you go into those breakout rooms, but I want to give you some choice. What do you think we can do?
If I could just quickly go around everybody that's on the call now, and if you could tell me which room you'd like to go into, then I can set that up and hopefully it will work. But I'll give you a moment just to quickly look at those grants that Bhaskar shared. A minute, and then if I could go to each person, and then I can assign you into each room. Okay, so Yuan, if you wouldn't mind, letting me know which room would you like to go into?
I don't really mind which one, but probably the AHSS one or the COVID response illegal wildlife one.
So which one was that? So the
The
so
CHRG, that I think that is the
HRG. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
or the illegal wildlife trade. Yeah.
Dayu, which one would you like to go to?
I'm interested in the AHSS course.
That's the same CHRG.
Okay. So we
CHRG.
only have a maximum of about 4 people, 3-4 people in each room. So if I come to you first, I guess.
Oh, thank you.
You're lucky. Right, sorry, let's just get that working. Didn't quite work. Got you. Okay, and Ying. Which room would you like to go into?
I don't mind either UKRI or the research professional.
Okay, so the UKRI one is...
No, that's not the. I'm asking whether you'd like to go to one of those 5 funding opportunities. So I think it was the Darwin illegal wildlife trade one, the humanities research grant, the German exchange, SNAP, or the WWF Russell Train. Those are the 5 options.
Oh, okay, cool. Maybe the Darwin?
Darwin?
Yeah.
Thank you. And next, Lauren. You're on mute.
Hi, I think either the German one, Dad, or sorry, I don't have a great connection. Is that working?
Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah.
That's fine, Lauren. I put you into Snap.
Okay, either the German one, Dad. Okay, sorry, I've got bad connection.
So how I think she's written in the chat that she would either want to be in the German DAAD one or the Cambridge Humanities Research Grant.
Ah, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's.
And then others are writing as well.
Okay.
So there's quite a few who want to go to Darwin. But anyway, keep going around.
Okay, and next it's Anna. Which room would you like to go into?
I want to go to the Darwin room. Thank you.
Prashant?
Yeah, I'll go for Darwin as well if there is enough space, or I'm happy to.
Okay, for now it's
Thank
fine. Anna Maria.
I'm going to the research professionals.
Okay, so
that's not an option. So it's those 5 that I've just sent out, which is the Darwin illegal wildlife trade, the Cambridge Humanities Research Grant, the German exchange grants, the SNAP Science for Nature and People partnership, or the WWF Russell Train.
Then the SNAP or the WWF.
okay, if you don't mind, I'll put you into Snap because we don't have many people there. And next, Divya.
Hi, I'll go for the Snap.
Thank you. Divya. Chen, next, please.
AHSS. Thank you.
That's the CHRG.
CHRG.
Thank you.
That's right.
Zara, next, please.
The German one, if there's still space, please.
Yep, and the German one is SNAP, isn't it?
No, the German one's DAAD. That's DAAD.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine, Zara. Next, AK Parker. Sorry, I don't know your first name.
Snap, please.
Okay. Miriam.
I really don't mind. So whichever has fewest people.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, Miriam. So let's put you into. If it's allowing me to do some reason, it's not. Okay. Next, Chioma.
Snap. I would like to go for, yeah, Snap.
I think it's telling me that it's full. I've only got 3 in that one. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
For some reason.
which other options are available?
We've got Russell Train and the DAAD one, or that's it. Sorry.
Okay, let me go for DAAD.
Thank you. Actually, it's not allowing me to go into that for some reason. So I will try and put you in there. This is very odd. It's not allowing any more. That's odd. Ah, actually, I've just worked out what's going on. That's fine.
Can you increase the numbers?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Path.
What about the WWF one?
Russell Train.
Or will I be alone there?
No, I don't think there are any which are empty.
That's actually fine. And
yeah.
Akanksha, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Did you still have any room for the Cambridge Humanities grant left?
Actually, it looks like it is putting you in there. That's fine.
Great. So those who are going for the humanities grant, there's a link there which actually gives you some examples of successful proposals. So it's quite a useful little guide. There's one from an early career person and one from an experienced PI. So you can actually look at some of those examples. But what are we at? We're at 11:48 on my clock. How about, should we say 15, 20 minutes for people? 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay.
Yeah, just to kind of work their way through. And then I think what Zoom does is it automatically brings you back into plenary.
Yes.
I don't expect we'll have a huge amount of time for feedback and reporting, but I hope the exercise is useful in any case. I think it's good to have the opportunity to get into something real rather than just listening to somebody talking about how to write a grant. So we'll have like 5 minutes just to circle back, but we don't necessarily want detailed feedback.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'll put you all into your rooms now. See you soon.
We've got 3 people who haven't gone yet. Great. You are able to now, as host, I think, nip into each room just to check that things are okay. I don't think I can.
Can you not? Would you like?
But I mean, I don't need to. I don't need to.
Okay.
I think So what you can do is just go very quickly across the 5 rooms and make sure that I'm assuming the chat stays live, so they should be able to click on the relevant opportunity.
Yes.
But if they have any uncertainty, what they have to do is just kind of talk through the opportunity, think about what it might mean if they were going to put an application in, and just kind of chat to each other about it, and then come back in 20 minutes.
Okay, let's go to the first one. The DAAD one only has 2 people.
That's all right. Let them talk to each other. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, let's move across then.
Should we? Hi, Hava. We were just talking about the exact brief for this discussion. So, do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah. So basically, it's just to have a look at this particular grant. See how you would approach it were you interested in actually doing this or making an application. If you have any queries or questions around sort of what you would put into particular areas, now's your chance just to jot them down and ask Bhaskar afterwards. Feel free, if you'd like to have a look at any of the other grants, I'm quite happy to move you into any of the other rooms. But it's just really a chance to think through a live grant and what your main issues would be around completing it. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies. I will have to leave in another 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I'll participate for the next 10 minutes, and then unfortunately I'll have to.
It's nice to see you. Just if you have any other questions, drop me an email and I can always put you in touch with Bhaskar. But yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And I love your background.
Ah,
okay. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, somebody else. Okay, she's here.
Hi, Chioma.
Hello.
How are you both?
Very well. Thank you.
Good. Are you okay with the exercise?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what we were supposed to be doing. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So the idea with this is just to have a look at a live grant.
Okay.
How you would approach completing this grant, and in particular, the issues or questions that you would have around a particular area. And then you can ask Bhaskar directly, you know, what you would, in a situation that you were faced with, how you would approach it, or what the problems might be for you. It's a good opportunity to ask somebody that writes so many grants and is often very successful with them live. And if not, you can also just send me a message afterwards.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay, Chioma? I'm sorry there are just two of you in this group. It all got a little bit hectic putting people in groups. But are you okay? Okay. I shall see you soon.
Cool. Thank you.
It's nice to see you, Chioma.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
So, yeah, okay.
So I guess that's where the collaborator can come from. So if, say, we're
Yeah, I find it's the range of things that are available is quite narrow, isn't it? And I guess this kind of grant, the internal Cambridge grant, we're lucky because a lot of universities, at least they don't have internal grant schemes. So if we can find a way to fit into this, sometimes the £1,000 or 10,000 really just does actually make a big difference. Yeah.
I've experience of Darwin Initiative grants, and those smaller pots were really, really valuable in supporting the case. Again, that sort of external verification from different funders saying we invest, we think this is worth a funding. And also in those you could, because they like a lot of matched funding, and so you could do quite a lot of funding in kind. You'd say that basically quantify what your organisation was already just contributing in overheads that counted, which was quite useful. So some of these pots could be useful for that kind of the bigger grants.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi there. I thought I'd just pop into your breakout room to see how you're doing and if the exercise is okay or made sense to you.
So for now, I was just looking at the call. We were like, we start like reading the call. So the call starts. So the call for this year, it was for the deadline was June, right? So it will be like and then the next call opens in February next year, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So
and so really the idea with this exercise is just to look at how you might complete a grant, but most importantly the issues that you might have in completing this, any particular questions that you have as to what you write, or any stumbling blocks that you can then discuss with Bhaskar afterwards, and he will then hopefully be able to iron out those issues that you may have around writing your grant, or point them in the right direction.
Yeah. So this grant is like for a team, right? So I am right now like a research associate, and then usually, but I finished my contract in March. So I am like looking for more projects, but usually these grants is like, I write it, but I'm not gonna be the principal investigator, but my supervisor, which is the professor, like in the university, right? So it is a little bit tricky because, or not tricky, but a bit confusing when if I am writing it and I enter as a researcher, as a postdoc.
Yes.
Or if I can be like a co-investigator, or if I am the principal investigator, the university hosts me, and yeah, how much is the percentage that they are sharing?
Okay. Okay. So would you, if this isn't particularly relevant to you, very happy to, if you'd like to look at one of the other grants. If your question is specifically around sort of what role you might take, co-investigator, principal, then I'm happy for Bhaskar to have a quick word with you if you'd like to ask more specific questions about that. I think his idea was for it to be quite general in terms of looking at a grant and just seeing what you might perceive as being difficult in completing it.
Okay.
It's just very sort of abstractly, not really specific.
Yeah. Okay.
So that he can give you some pointers as to, right, this is what you need to do, or this is what you need to concentrate on, or sometimes grants are just such a minefield that he'll be able to give you that advice.
Yeah, well, okay, then if we say it that way, so it is also like there is like different people that we would need to reach in this grant, right? Because it is like the funders are Nature Conservancy and Wildlife Conservation Society, are they? So it's like we would need to include them, or like write them and write the proposal ideas to all of them, to one of them, to.
I would say all of them.
Okay.
So in any grants that and from the start, for any grants that I've been involved with, to have the collaborative learning and input from the start saves so much problems at the end when a partner isn't happy or doesn't feel as though they've been involved enough, or it's not their perspective, or it goes against their ethical values, or the CEO suddenly becomes involved and says, actually, we're not interested in this, and pulls out. I've had all of those experiences. So from the beginning, kind of laying everything out at the start, understanding the roles that everybody's got to play, making sure that the timetable or the project plan is agreed at the start is vital. So yes, speaking to all of the partners. And honestly, nightmare. I've been in positions where it's been a nightmare at the end.
Yeah. So the process would be like have a summary of the main idea of your project, and then write them and see if they are interested or how they could be interested,
and what role they play,
which role they would play. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hope
good.
That sorry, AK partner, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Yeah, it's Abigail. Thanks.
Abigail, hello. Are you okay, and Divya, are you okay with this exercise? Is everything all right?
Yeah, just like reading through the call and thinking about like what sort of projects you could like think about crafting for it. Sounds good.
Just drop me a message if you want me to come back into the group, or I can get Bhaskar to come and sit in this group for a little while if you'd like. If not, we'll see you in about 7 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
But taking the cats to the markets is done by women.
Okay, yeah, that's also interesting, like the division of work between men and women.
Yeah, of course, I'm talking about relatively small fishing operations, not those industrial fishing operations.
Yeah. Hello, Hawa. Just thought we have another participant. I was wondering if somebody joined late.
It's just me. How are you both?
Yeah,
Hi,
yeah,
I'm
good,
good.
good. We're just brainstorming a bit. We're not.
Fantastic. That's all. I came in to just check that you're okay with this particular exercise, or if you need any help from Bhaskar or myself.
Well, we're not entirely sure like what we're doing, so we're just brainstorming a bit what the topic could be. And
Okay,
what,
which is a good place to start, right?
yeah.
So it's all very hypothetical, of course, and
Yeah, I don't think it's relevant for either of us because our countries are not even eligible because it has some eligible countries where you have to be from.
Okay. Okay.
Very hypothetical, but still.
The main thing here is any particular areas where this was a relevant grant to you, where you may have a problem in completing it, is having the advice from Bhaskar at this particular moment in time as to future projects.
Yeah.
And even if you come across grants as we go through the next year, and if you have any outstanding questions, just drop me a line and I can go to the relevant person and the relevant academic to get some help for you.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a very small group here. So
no, it's, yes, I think breakout groups are interesting on Zoom.
Yeah, I've never had to create one. I only was in some, but I don't know.
Yeah, they're a bit funny, but they're nice because it does mean that you can actually get to speak to people and it's a bit more interactive.
It is nice, yes, yes, but it gets more complicated when you give people a choice where they want to be.
And that's very much Bhaskar's way, is giving people the choice. Other
academics, yeah.
We're going here. Parth, do you have any specific questions or anything I can help?
Well, right now, no. As I said, as Miriam mentioned, that we are generally working on a hypothetical problem.
Yes.
But I'm from India, and I do write proposals, or I'm expected to write proposals now. And I will be also helping some students write proposals. So that way I am definitely interested in this process.
Okay.
Plus this idea of funding opportunities, I mean, where all can we get funding from is something very helpful to me. So he did mention research professional and this UKRI. So I don't know whether they will give fundings for Indian students or for Indian work in India, but maybe there are some.
It's definitely worth exploring.
Yeah.
Because in my, I've definitely come across grants where they do allow international academics and international students to apply for grants. Perhaps the principal investigator needs to be from, the UK or UK academic, university, but I've definitely seen grants where it's international and they invite international, input.
Is there any possibility of collaborations between you and us? We have recently become a university, and we already have some tie-ups with the Michigan State University in the US. Some kind of a collaboration alliance we have made. Do you think something like this is possible?
Oh, definitely.
I'll write to you. I'll write to you.
Definitely. If you could send me a little bit about what topics you're interested in, specific areas and research that you're looking at, then I will find the relevant person, definitely.
Yeah. And we could maybe even, if your students want to do some work in India, we could maybe host them somehow.
Perfect.
That can also be done.
Yeah, perfect. Please send me an email.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Okay, I look forward to getting the email, Parth. And Miriam, I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much.
One day soon.
Yes, let's hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, okay. Take care.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Miriam, any more inputs on this?
Sorry?
Any more inputs on this project right now?
Hi.
Oh yeah, we're back.
We're nearly all back now. I think we're all back now, Bhaskar.
Good. I mean, did it broadly work? I know it's a very short time, but did it, I mean, were you able to firstly look at the particular calls and then kind of start to think about some of the things that I was encouraging you to think about? It's kind of nods. I guess.
Do you want me to say something?
Yeah, if you like.
I mean, can we? Okay.
Yeah. We've got. Let's have 5 minutes of just kind of an open conversation.
So Miriam and we were working on this WWF project. So I mean, we kind of followed your first slide, looking at purpose, collaborators, audience, expectations. That first slide.
Yeah.
So in terms of collaborators, purpose, I'll quickly mention later. Collaborators, we decided to work on some problem in the fisheries sector. Fisheries related to maybe climate change, some effect of climate change on fisheries. So we looked at collaborators as one is some institute which is doing research in the fisheries department, some kind of fisheries. We also looked at collaborators as some kind of fishing community in terms of some cooperative company if they have, or something like that. And some other researchers, local researchers maybe. In terms of audience, we tried to look at how WWF thinks of grants and how previously what kind of grants they have given, what is their general area that they favor for conservation. In terms of expectations, there were a lot from WWF, but I mean, as far as project is concerned, we looked at maybe looking at gender equity as one of the important key areas. We also looked at things like nature-based solutions could be. So, I mean, we had an interesting discussion about whether to use some of these, in terms that are kind of doing rounds like ecosystem services and things like that. So generally, I mean, that was all. We didn't really get a lot of time to.
Yeah. But I mean, some of the points you've made are really important because, you start to try and second guess. Is this funder going to be interested in me using these new jargon terms? Or is it, how do we do this, etc. So I think that's, those are the sorts of things you're trying to second guess in terms of, what is the funder actually looking for and what are the kind of triggers that will help me to get my my proposal through the hurdles. Good. I mean, these were just to provide a sort of more specific context for what otherwise can be a really abstract, passive session. So, I mean, I hope that was that it sounds like that worked in the sense, at least, you didn't have enough time, but I mean, those links are there. So if any of these, I mean, the 5 I chose were ones that I thought actually genuinely people on this training might actually be interested in taking forward. So and those are currently live. So if anybody does want to follow through on any of those calls, please go ahead and do so. Good. I think we are going to make the recording and the slides, how I'll send over to you as a,
okay.
So you can upload them on the website.
Okay.
But maybe we can start rounding off unless people have anything specific additionally that they'd like to add. How about you need to advertise our next event?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat now, actually. It's in 2 weeks' time. Actually, I think we've moved it slightly to 3 weeks, but it will be an interesting one because it's being held by one of our current PhD students. A focus for the ECR program is to have peer-to-peer learning. And given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, many people are unable to go into the field. So it's looking at desk-based research. So let me put this in the chat, and please do sign up to this and any of the others that are of interest to you. And one in particular is next year we have a media-based training opportunity. We only have very few spaces on this. So if you would like to take part, please sign up early.
Great. Okay, thank you all very much. And I hope it was somewhat useful, and good luck with writing these applications if you're in that process.
Thank you, Bhaskar.
Thanks, Bhaskar.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see everyone. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.